In this tutorial, we will recreate the Spiderverse intro sequence. Create the text and pre-compose it. Bend it again in a different axis. And distort it so that it kind of matches the original. Make it black. Add some bevel alpha from the top and from the right. And animate it over time. Now duplicate the original. Make it red. And animate the position a bit to the left, down, and in Z-axis. Also, add a linear white transition. In a similar way, make a purple color copy and animate the position to the top. Following the same steps, add one blue color copy. Add another blue color copy and add brushstrokes effect to it. And finally, add an inverted edge copy in the bottom and push it down a bit. By default, brushstrokes effect is a bit dynamic. Add a positive time effect to make it static. Now copy the original text layer and paste it in the main comp. And pre-compose it. Head into this pre-comp and create shapes from text. Delete the fill and add some stroke to it. Next, animate the trim parts and you will get something like this. Make it red. Add another white copy on top. And use a gradient map to blend them both. And with some minor tweaks and opacity keyframes, you will end up with something like this. Now pre-comp all this together and name it base text animation. Also, select the base text and the adjustment layer with the bend effects and pre-compose them together. And name it base text Luma map. Now let's add the glitch effects. Create a new solid and add a cell pattern effect to it. Change the pattern to plates, increase the size, and add some contrast to it. Add a random seed expression to randomize the pattern. Now create a blue color solid and use this as a Luma matte. Also, use the base text map as an alpha matte and check this out. I also added a random expression to the hue for some color variation. Now duplicate the solid with the pattern and this automatically generates a new pattern. Create a grid pattern and apply it using set matte effect for the second layer. Now create another cell pattern using crystals this time and increase the contrast. Animate the contrast to make it a revealing kind of animation. Add a time expression to the evolution and to the offset for some more variation. Now create a red solid, use this as a Luma matte and set the base text as an alpha matte just like before. Apply the grid pattern using set matte effect and invert it. I also created another crystals pattern, but with contrast animated in reverse this time. And if we use this as a Luma mat, this will slowly fade out the pattern. I also created a couple of other grid patterns and following the same steps, created few more variations. By combining all these effects and by animating the opacities, you will end up with something like this. Now let's create few more glitch effects. Copy the base text animation and freeze frame it. Pre-compose this. Add some randomness to the scale. Make it blue and add some chromatic aberration. Now create a glitch pattern using fractal noise. Fractal type to max, noise type to block, increase the contrast, decrease the brightness, increase the scale width, decrease the scale height, and add a random expression to the seed. Use this pattern as a Luma mat. Now let's create another variation. Start by adding a random expression to the scale again, but with a higher value this time. Also add a wiggle expression to the position. Add a gradient ramp to give it some color, and randomize the hue. Use the glitch pattern as a Luma inverted mat. I also created another glitch pattern and used that as a displacement mat. And finally, added some chromatic aberration. Duplicate it to automatically create a new variation of the same effect. And apply a set matte effect and use the grid pattern on this. This gives it some more variation. Now create a spider web shape using shape layers. Give it some random rotation using a random expression. Give it some color, duplicate it, and add a slight offset to the rotation. Give it a different color. Now duplicate it again and give it a different color. Change the blending mode to screen. Now I created a new grid pattern and used that as an alpha mat for the spiderweb comp. Now let's create the multiverse glitches. Apply an invert effect to the freeze frame comp to get a new variation of the final look, a new Spider-Man. In a similar way, I created a few more variations of the final look using invert effect and bend effects. I also imported few random images, created a new randomized cell pattern, and used it as a Luma mat for these images. I did the same thing for all these layers, and when you're done, you will end up with something like this. Finally, copy the spiderweb comp and paste it here on top. Now using shape layers, I created a few broken glass looking pieces like these. And arrange them this way in a new pre-comp based on the original intro animation. And use this as a Luma mat for the Multiverse images composition. And check this out. Finally, I animated the opacities of all these effects based on the original intro animation. And ended up with this. Okay, now let's animate the caption text. Create the text and pre-compose it. Add a drop shadow. Add a red color shadow. Add a blue color shadow. and another one. Add a brushstrokes effect, and finally add some bevel alpha. This finishes the look. Now let's add the glitch effects. Copy the caption text comp and paste it in the main comp and make it red. Add a mirror effect to it. Add a random expression to the scale and to the position. You can use wiggle expression too. Add a drop shadow effect and add some random expression to the direction and to the distance. Now I created two new glitch patterns and used them as a luminance matte using set matte effect. I also created a black flag using mask and used it as an alpha matte to cut off the effect. For the next variation, add a random scale expression to the final text comp. Use the newly created glitch patterns as the Luma mattes. And add some chromatic aberration to finish the look. Now on to the next variation. Create a circular grid pattern. Create a new glitch pattern and use that as a luminance matte. Use the previously created black flag and the glitch patterns as Luma mattes and you will end up with something like this. Add some chromatic aberration. Add some glow. Give it some color. And randomize the color. On to the next variation now. Apply drop shadow effect to the base text and randomize the direction and the distance. Randomize the hue and add some random fast blur. Add a random expression to the scale, to the position, and to the opacity. Use the glitch pattern as a luminance matte and add some glow effect to it. Apply a grid pattern using the set matte effect. I also added some displacement using a new circular dots map. And finally, added some chromatic aberration. Now for the next glitch variation. I added random drop shadows like before. Added a random hue. Gave it some blur. And randomized the scale, position, and the opacity. Used the glitch pattern as a luminance matte. Added some glow. Added some grid. And finally, added the chromatic aberration. Now, I created a spiderweb black and white map using shape layers and used that as a displacement map. Also used it as a Luma inverted matte to improve the look. Finally, I animated the opacities and ended up with this. Now for the final glitch effect, I created a displacement map using glitch pattern, which means getting rid of the black color and changing it to a grey color. And use this as a displacement map with some random displacement. I animated a scatter effect and also animated the position to finish the animation. Oof, with this, we're done. And now for the cool part. If you step to the base text comp and change the text, everything except the trim parts update. For the trim parts comp, we need to do it again though. Create shapes from text, delete the fill, add some stroke, and animate the trim parts. And we can also change the base caption text. And every single effect will update in the main comp just like that. Okay, with this, we're done. Thank you for watching and please subscribe for more tutorials.